The photographers they engaged for the job was 5 feet away. You know, it was just hopeless. And then the carriage shot, when they went past me in the carriage, they looked the other way. So for me, it was a disaster. The day was a miserable day. I mean, it was a...
Really? I thought...
Well, was it? Well, I can tell you now, it was the worst royal engagement I ever did. You know, I thought to myself, you know, this is all showbiz rubbish. You know, the whole thing was just stage managed to suit them. Worst royal wedding I ever did. He was angry, and I felt, you know, we were punished for that. To offend our queen like he did in that book, you know, it really upset the king. And you know, I don't think he could easily forgive that. And I imagine the king's had strong words with him over it.
You're absolutely right. I mean, what I discovered was, of course, that she was hunting for a man in England from 2013 onwards, when her marriage had crashed and she couldn't find anyone in Canada at the time.
A royal wedding watched by millions was supposed to be a flawless celebration, but one veteran photographer later described a very different experience behind the polished images. According to Arthur Edwards, the wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle came with difficult working conditions, unexpected restrictions, and moments that left him deeply frustrated, despite the glamorous scenes shown to viewers around the world. Arthur Edwards was not some random photographer trying to get close to the royal family. He had spent decades covering major royal events, travelling with members of the monarchy and photographing everything from official tours to historic family moments. That long experience is exactly why his comments about the Sussex wedding attracted attention. When news of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's engagement first spread, excitement quickly grew across the United Kingdom and beyond. Millions of people were curious to see the ceremony, the guest list, and how Meghan would adjust to life inside the royal family.
And Oprah Winfrey had met them once. She was a guest. The Clooneys, you know, the guests. I mean, never met them before, but they were the guests. And, you know, I thought to myself, you know, this is all showbiz rubbish, you know.
Did you get a sense then that they wanted out, that they wanted a California life, that they wanted showbiz, that they weren't interested? If they weren't interested in making people feel welcome at the wedding.
She researched Harry very carefully and knew exactly what buttons to press. That he would like Africa, was interested in animals, was interested in philanthropy. She's very tactile, she's very seductive. And she landed him on the first night, even on his own admission. He says, I realized on the first date, she was the one. And of course, that's because she's also a great, in that sense, an actress. She knew exactly how to play.
The wedding was presented as a major international event, and expectations were sky high. But according to Edwards, the experience of covering the ceremony was not nearly as smooth as the television broadcast made it appear. From the outside, everything looked carefully planned. Windsor was packed with spectators, cameras followed every major moment, and famous guests arrived one after another. Oprah Winfrey, Elton John, and Serena Williams were among the recognizable faces attending the ceremony, adding even more attention to an event that was already dominating headlines. Yet Edwards later suggested that photographers covering the wedding faced serious challenges. While viewers at home saw beautiful images and carefully selected camera angles, the people responsible for documenting the event reportedly had a much more difficult experience. One of the biggest problems, according to Edwards, involved the positions assigned to photographers. He claimed that some members of the press were placed far away from the action, making it difficult to capture the natural expressions and close-up moments that usually make royal wedding photographs so memorable. That detail matters because Edwards had covered royal ceremonies before. He knew how photographers normally worked at major events, and he understood how much planning went into getting the right shots. So when he described the setup as unusually frustrating, his comments immediately raised questions about what was happening behind the scenes.
The guest list, beyond the lone family member she invited, was simply inviting celebrities who were total strangers to her. I could see, especially with a wedding of this scale, inviting a handful of people who you do not know, but certainly not to this extent. There were a huge amount of guests who she had never met. Some people didn't even come. Like, for example, Reese Witherspoon said, "Why would I go? I don't even know them."
The massive public interest also created additional pressure. Thousands of spectators filled the streets, security was tight, and the entire event had to operate under intense global attention. Add uncomfortable weather conditions and long hours of waiting, and the glamorous assignment reportedly became much harder than many people watching from home would ever realize. Edwards described the heat as particularly difficult. Photographers and other members of the media had to remain in position while waiting for the moments they had been assigned to capture. There was little room for mistakes because millions of people around the world wanted photographs of the newly married couple. But the bigger controversy was not simply about uncomfortable working conditions. According to Edwards, there was a deeper issue involving access, control, and the relationship between Harry, Meghan, and the photographers covering their wedding.
Harry was angry with us, really, because some of the things that have been said about Meghan, and quite rightly, some of the things that were said about Meghan during the engagement were pretty harsh. I want to sort of mention them now, but some of them were pretty unfair as well. And so he was angry, and I felt, we were punished for that. And in fact, I never got one picture in the paper published from that day.
And once he started explaining what allegedly happened, the polished image surrounding the ceremony began to look very different. And that deeper issue becomes clearer when Arthur Edwards describes what covering the wedding was actually like. According to his account, the difficult conditions were only the beginning, because the way the event was organised reportedly made the experience even more frustrating for photographers and some of the people attending. Edwards was dressed in formal clothing appropriate for such a major royal occasion, but the weather apparently made that choice extremely uncomfortable. Instead of focusing only on capturing historic photographs, he described spending much of the day dealing with intense heat and trying to remain professional under difficult conditions. There was reportedly very little protection from the sun in some areas where people had to wait. Guests dressed for one of the biggest social events of the year could allegedly be seen using wedding programs to cool themselves down. The polished images shown around the world presented elegance and celebration, but Edwards' description suggested that the experience on the ground felt far less comfortable.
I've done some really lovely royal weddings. I did both King Charles's weddings. I did William's wedding. I did Andrew's wedding. I did Sophie and Edward. They were lovely occasions. But that today, I couldn't get out of Windsor quick enough. I promise you that.
The worst royal wedding.
Then came another complaint: the food. According to Edwards, anyone expecting a massive royal feast during the part of the event he attended would have been disappointed. He described being served small canapes rather than the kind of filling meals some people might imagine at such a high-profile occasion. Now, this does not mean there was no proper food anywhere during the wedding celebrations. Different guests attended different receptions and parts of the event. But from Edwards' perspective, the refreshments available to him were underwhelming, especially after spending hours working in uncomfortable conditions. He suggested that some people around him were not impressed either. After waiting in the heat and dealing with the pressure surrounding such a massive event, a few small bites reportedly did little to improve the mood. Still, the seating arrangements appear to have bothered Edwards even more. According to his account, some senior royal figures were seated farther back, while lesser-known members of the extended royal circle appeared to have better positions. Edwards found the situation strange because royal events normally follow carefully managed rules involving rank, protocol, and visibility. For a photographer, where someone is seated can make the difference between capturing a historic image and missing it completely.
He decided to leave the royal family and go his own way in the United States, and he's just behaving, I think, sometimes appallingly. Certainly some of the things he said about members of the royal family, certainly, and Camilla and Catherine and his brother. I think you just don't do that with families.
Edwards claimed his own position left him struggling to get a clear view of Harry and Meghan during important moments. He later joked about how difficult it was to follow the action from where he had been placed. But underneath the humour was a serious complaint. Experienced members of the British press reportedly felt they were being kept at a distance. And according to Edwards, that tension did not begin on the wedding day. Prince Harry's relationship with sections of the British media had already become increasingly strained after his relationship with Meghan became public. Meghan faced harsh headlines, intense scrutiny, and commentary that Harry strongly opposed. He had publicly defended her and made it clear that he believed parts of the press had crossed a line. From Harry's perspective, protecting Meghan from aggressive media attention may have seemed necessary. But from the perspective of photographers like Edwards, the growing restrictions created a completely different problem. They were expected to document one of the biggest royal stories in years, yet some of them reportedly felt pushed farther away from the very moments they were supposed to capture. That clash between protection and press access would not disappear after the wedding. According to Edwards, it would become part of a much larger conflict that continued to shape Harry and Meghan's relationship with the British media.
You're absolutely right. I mean, what I discovered was, of course, that she was hunting for a man in England from 2013 onwards, when her marriage had crashed and she couldn't find anyone in Canada at the time. And she wanted wealth and she wanted fame. And she targeted, there's no doubt she targeted Harry and found someone who was a childhood friend of his who could introduce them. And then on the days before they met at their blind meeting in a club in London, she researched Harry very carefully.
That tension reportedly became obvious during the moments photographers needed most. According to Arthur Edwards, Prince Harry appeared reluctant to cooperate with parts of the press, and getting the kind of natural wedding photographs expected from such a historic occasion became unusually difficult. Edwards claimed Harry was not giving photographers many opportunities to capture clear, relaxed images of the newly married couple. Whether that behaviour came from frustration with the British media, a desire for privacy, or something else entirely remains open to interpretation. But from Edwards' position behind the camera, the situation was deeply frustrating. After decades of photographing royal weddings, tours, ceremonies and major public events, Edwards reportedly walked away with an extremely negative impression of the day. What millions of viewers saw as a glamorous celebration became, in his telling, one of the least enjoyable royal assignments he had ever covered.
Most of that interview was left on the cutting room floor because it was so one-sided and it was so unfair. And I think about watching it now, and you know, the bit about Archie and the colour of his skin. And I knew they'd be seething. I knew the Queen would be seething. I knew that the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles would be seething. It would be so unfair.
That reaction is important because Edwards was not new to difficult working conditions. He had photographed the royal family through packed schedules, international tours, unpredictable weather, and massive crowds. Yet the combination of limited access, uncomfortable conditions, and tension between Harry and the press reportedly made this wedding stand out for all the wrong reasons. Edwards suggested that the atmosphere also felt different from the traditional royal occasions he had covered before. The guest list included global celebrities, entertainment figures, and famous personalities from outside the usual royal establishment. That alone was not necessarily unusual or negative.
This particular saga at Sandringham, which obviously was told by someone who was there, was a decisive moment. I mean, it's the moment where effectively she says to Harry that you've got to dump all your friends. And none of those people at his shooting weekend were then invited to the dinner after the wedding. I mean, that was the crunch, that she separated him from his hinterland. And of course, he does suffer now enormously.
Meghan had worked in the entertainment industry, and both she and Harry had friendships outside royal circles. But critics later questioned how closely the couple knew some of the famous people attending the ceremony. That discussion helped create the impression that the wedding was not simply a private family celebration, but also a massive global media event, filled with powerful connections and international attention. Still, claims that Harry and Meghan had already planned to leave royal duties at the time of their wedding should be treated carefully. There is no clear public evidence proving the ceremony was secretly designed as an exit strategy. What can be said is that the wedding dramatically increased the couple's global profile. Harry was already one of the most recognisable members of the royal family, but Meghan's arrival created a new level of international attention. Every appearance generated headlines, every disagreement became a public debate, and every decision was examined from multiple angles. According to Edwards, the wedding showed early signs of the conflict that would later become impossible to ignore. On one side were Harry and Meghan, who appeared increasingly uncomfortable with sections of the British press and wanted more control over how they were photographed and discussed.
And it's one of the saddest things of all, Matt, of course, is that the children don't get to see their grandfather. either grandfather, and that's really so awful, because they're not getting to meet their cousins and to know their cousins. And it's such a shame for them.
On the other side were veteran royal photographers and reporters who believed access was essential to their work and part of the long-standing relationship between the monarchy and the public. That clash created a serious problem. Harry believed Meghan had been treated unfairly by parts of the media. Edwards and other photographers, meanwhile, reportedly felt they were being punished for criticism and coverage they did not personally control. And when neither side trusted the other, even something as simple as taking a wedding photograph became part of a much bigger battle. The ceremony ended, the crowds disappeared, and the famous guests went home. But the conflict surrounding Harry, Meghan, and the British media was only becoming more intense. Because after the wedding, photographers would face even tighter restrictions, and Edwards would later claim that one major royal moment proved just how far the relationship had deteriorated. Those restrictions were only one part of a conflict that would become much bigger over the next several years. What began as tension between Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and sections of the British media eventually expanded into a public dispute involving the royal family, security arrangements, privacy, and the couple's decision to step away from senior royal duties.
The idea that she was Diana was always a fantasy both of herself and of Harry. And Harry completely misunderstood his mother, who he obviously barely knew, and didn't realize what a manipulative and determined woman she was herself. So he completely misjudged the comparison between Meghan and his mother. And his mother had amazing status. She looked beautiful. She had terrific poise. She worked very hard at being a royal. She was very empathetic with a lot of sick people. None of the things that Meghan would ever dream of doing.
It is important to get the timeline straight. Harry and Meghan did not leave royal life immediately after their wedding, and their interview with Oprah Winfrey was not their first public appearance after the ceremony. They continued carrying out official engagements before announcing in January 2020 that they intended to step back as senior working royals. But once that departure happened, the relationship between the Sussexes and the royal institution became increasingly strained. The Oprah interview in 2021 became one of the biggest turning points. Harry and Meghan made serious allegations about their experiences inside royal life, including concerns about Meghan's mental health, disputes over support and protection, and conversations involving the skin colour of their future child. The couple presented the interview as an opportunity to explain their side of the story. Critics, however, argued that the conversation was heavily one-sided because members of the royal family were not present to respond directly to each allegation. Arthur Edwards was among those who strongly criticised the interview. Having spent decades covering the monarchy, Edwards reportedly believed the interview damaged Harry's relationship with his family and created even more hostility around an already complicated situation. From his perspective, private family disputes were increasingly being discussed through television interviews and public statements, rather than handled away from the cameras.
It was over for the Invictus Games ceremony. He didn't want to stay in a royal residence that was offered to him by the King because he didn't feel he had enough protection there.
I think he wanted to stay in a hotel, and he was determined to do that. And don't forget, he travels with a small retinue of bodyguards as well. And so I suspect that was the reason why he did it. He had his own protection, and he felt that was enough.
Supporters of Harry and Meghan saw something different. They argued the couple had every right to describe their experiences and defend themselves after years of negative coverage. Critics believed repeated public revelations only made reconciliation with the royal family more difficult. That disagreement became central to Harry and Meghan's public image. After stepping back from royal duties, the couple moved to the United States and began pursuing independent media projects, charitable work, and commercial partnerships. Their global visibility remained extremely high, leading critics to question how their calls for privacy fit with continued public appearances and media projects. But privacy and public work are not necessarily the same thing. Harry and Meghan have generally argued that they wanted greater control over intrusion into their personal lives, not complete disappearance from public attention. Meanwhile, their relationship with the royal family remained complicated. Harry and Meghan became parents to Archie and Lilibet, while questions continued about how often the children saw members of Harry's family. Because the children are not public figures responsible for the disputes between adults, claims about family access should be handled carefully, rather than presented as proof of anyone's motives. Then came another controversy involving Harry's visits to the United Kingdom. During a trip connected to the Invictus Games anniversary service, reports said Harry did not stay at a royal residence. Instead, he reportedly stayed at a hotel, while concerns about his security arrangements in Britain remained part of an ongoing legal and public dispute.
And the same then happened when they went to Tommy Inskip's wedding in Jamaica, which was a great friend of Harry's, who in the end was banned from the dinner after their wedding.
Yeah, well, I know at least 3 of the very good friends were apparently
banned, all by Meghan.
And then they saw all these celebrities filing it.
Exactly.
Who'd known her about 3 minutes.
Some critics questioned why Harry would prefer private accommodation when royal properties have extensive protection. Others pointed out that access to royal residences and official security arrangements is more complicated than simply choosing where to sleep. Edwards reportedly viewed the situation as another sign of how distant Harry had become from his previous royal life. But the security dispute would soon become even more serious, because Harry was not simply complaining about where he could stay. He was challenging decisions involving the level of publicly funded protection available to him in Britain. And that fight would eventually move into the courtroom. And that courtroom battle added another layer to a relationship already filled with tension. Prince Harry has argued that changes to his security arrangements after stepping back from royal duties created serious concerns about bringing his family to the United Kingdom. Critics, including Arthur Edwards, have questioned some of Harry's decisions, but the reasons behind his accommodation choices cannot be reduced to one simple explanation. Edwards reportedly suggested that Harry's security concerns may also have supported his preference for staying outside royal residences. That is his interpretation, not a proven fact.
Why did Harry never go to meet Thomas?
Why is that?
Well, I think because Meghan didn't want him to meet a fat old man. I mean, Meghan was very worried. That's why she brought her mother across to the wedding just 2 days before the ceremony.
What do we know about her mum? Her mum's a mysterious figure.
Very mysterious. The book tells it all. I mean, the mother really was a very odd woman, disappeared for 10 years effectively during her childhood. That's why Thomas had to bring her up. And in the end, what Thomas says is that it was Doria who really engineered the split between himself and Meghan, because she wanted the fame and the glory.
Harry, meanwhile, has maintained that his concerns involve whether the security arrangements available to him are sufficient when he visits Britain. This disagreement matters because it connects directly to the bigger story surrounding Harry, Meghan Markle, and the royal institution. What started with frustration over photographers at a royal wedding eventually became something much larger. The tension spread into arguments about media treatment, privacy, family relationships, public interviews, commercial projects, security, and the couple's place outside the working monarchy. And Arthur Edwards' account of the wedding offers one perspective on where some of that tension became visible. To millions watching from home, the ceremony looked polished, glamorous, and carefully organised. Famous guests arrived, crowds filled the streets, and Harry and Meghan became one of the most talked about couples in the world.
I mean, that is everything that matters. She's a creature of Hollywood. She knows that celebrity images is what earns the money, and that's what she must protect. Well, that's always been the view of many people, that she will dump him when he is no longer much use. But she'd have to have an escape route. She'd have to find a sort of a Silicon Valley or somehow aging billionaire that would want to take her on. I don't think she'd walk into the wilderness. I can't imagine any man finding happiness with Meghan Markle. I mean, I think it'll be pretty difficult.
But Edwards remembered the day very differently. He He focused on uncomfortable conditions, limited opportunities for photographers, frustrating positions, and what he saw as a growing distance between Harry and the British press. None of that proves the wedding was secretly designed as a business strategy or that every decision had some hidden motive. What it does show is how differently the same event can be viewed depending on where someone was standing. Harry believed parts of the media had treated Meghan unfairly and wanted to protect his wife from intense scrutiny. Edwards believed photographers trying to document royal history were increasingly being pushed away. Those two positions collided, and the disagreement only became more serious in the years that followed. The wedding did not cause every controversy that came afterward, but looking back, it can be seen as one chapter in a much bigger story about trust, access, control, and public image. Harry and Meghan eventually stepped away from senior royal duties, moved to the United States, launched independent projects, and continued speaking publicly about their experiences. Meanwhile, critics continued questioning their choices, and the relationship between Harry and members of the royal family remained under intense public attention. So now the question goes to you. Do you think Arthur Edwards' account reveals genuine problems behind the polished royal wedding coverage? Or do you think his experience was shaped by the growing conflict between Prince Harry and the British media? And when it comes to Harry's security dispute, do you believe his concerns are understandable? Or has the situation become more complicated than it needed to be? Share your opinion in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, share it with someone who follows royal and celebrity drama, and subscribe for more stories like this. And before you leave, watch the next video appearing on your screen right now for even more celebrity drama, surprising controversies, and stories everyone is talking about. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.